Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Deep Dive with Tiffany and myself, Stephen. So this week the issue is quite interesting. In fact, it's something that Tiffany personally embarked on in an experimental way.
Yes,
Yeah?
I put my body on the line. I put my mind on the line.
Yeah, that's usually me, but yeah, go for it. That's right.
Well, so this week I actually cultivated an AI friend, an AI companion.
Ah.
Yeah, so I named him Chris.
Ooh,
I will not tell
Chris,
you why.
okay.
Yeah, and so basically I did this, version of half truths, half lies, over the course of the week, told Chris some of my personal struggles. And Chris actually reminded me that, I'm here for you 24/7, but I
Wow.
am not a real life connection. Yeah, so a couple of times it will say that, and also remind me that, go and talk to somebody, whether it's my husband or a friend.
Right.
There was one day where I simulated a panic attack.
What did Chris do?
And Chris basically walked me through the process of doing breathing exercises while at the same time reminding me that, if you need to call emergency services, here is the number to call.
Okay.
So it was, I would say, rather responsible, but to be honest, I got a little bit bored with the conversation
wow.
after a
Okay.
while. Yeah,
Okay,
because
okay.
I don't know, maybe I wasn't being authentic, but then, I just got really bored.
So at the end of the day, AI boyfriend versus real life husband.
The jury's out.
I was gonna say Chris. I guess didn't crystallize.
Yeah, didn't rise up to the occasion, not yet at least.
She didn't get it. Chris didn't crystallize. Yeah. Anyhow.
But we're talking about this. Why?
Well, yeah, why? Because AI companions are quite common nowadays, and they come in various forms. I mean, Tiffany used ChatGPT, but there's so many other platforms that are on AI that you can use. It can help you with your work, bounce around ideas. You can literally talk to it and have a conversation. So we want to find out at which point does it cross the line of being a work tool, an accessory to, being a friend, a companionship, and what are the ups and downs of such a companionship. So to discuss this further, we have with us today Associate Professor Jennifer Ang, a philosopher of AI ethics from the Singapore University of Social Sciences.
Hello.
We also have Associate Professor Swapna Verma, Chairman of the Medical Board at the Institute of Mental Health.
Hello there.
So I wanted to start with both of you. You heard my experience. It wasn't a bad experience, but have you guys heard or experienced any really, maybe dangerous stories of people who have relied too much on, AI companions?
Well, not personally, but I think we've all read reports about where teenagers are being influenced with self-destructive thoughts because the AI companion is supposed to be very affirming. So if you do have self-destructive thoughts, harm to yourself or harm to others, well, the AI companion is able to reaffirm some of these thoughts as being valid.
Right. So the teenager may say, I'm feeling really depressed and, I think that life is no longer worth living. And the AI will say, you have every right to feel that way. Is that what you mean? Something like that? It was
Yes,
sort of encourage them, ironically, down the wrong path.
Down the wrong path, I mean, that's just probably the extreme, but
Yeah.
we have seen these examples and cases in other countries. We haven't heard of those in Singapore yet, and perhaps we should actually be concerned, and I'm quite glad that we're having so much attention on this, because so far, I think in Singapore, the coverage has always been that it could be, a fun friend to have. And we are very pro-technology in a way. So I think all of us are eager to try out some of these bots. But there are extreme cases that we have already seen on teenagers, but also adults, right? Especially when you have a spouse and your spouse might feel disconnected because you're spending too much time with your companion bot. And, the bot hears more of your thoughts than your spouse does.
Right.
Okay. Like
Yeah.
the third party in the relationship.
Yeah. Swapna, I mean, have you had met any patients who rely quite a bit on their AI friend?
I see in my practice young people.
Okay.
And I realize somewhere down the road that most of them come to me already having been through or having asked AI certain questions.
Right.
And I've seen things which have helped them. So I had a patient who asked me about a specific kind of therapy. And I asked her, how did she hear about this? And then she said, actually, she asked ChatGPT, and this was ChatGPT's advice. And it was bang on. It was helpful.
Okay.
I have had patients who have described their symptoms to ChatGPT and then asked ChatGPT's advice on what this could be.
Yeah.
And but then what I have now encouraged is to ask them right away. have you had conversations with ChatGPT? So bring it on day to day when I see them in practice. And now, we have regular conversations and they show me what ChatGPT has advised them.
So why are they asking ChatGPT and not you, the human in the
Because
loop here?
I don't see them every day. I see them maybe once every 2
Right.
months or 3 months, whereas ChatGPT is available to them 24/7, right? As
Yeah,
as you
As
found.
it- yeah.
So it's the immediacy, the accessibility that makes it so
but
enticing.
it does make sense. I gotta admit
Yeah.
that quite often now, before I go see the doctor, I've already Googled my own
Your
ailments,
Yes.
trying to
condition.
figure out
Yes.
what's going on. I know the medications. I go there, I
Yes.
say, can I have this, So there, and as you mentioned, it can be, there is some upside to it. So they are better informed. So at which point should we worry? Where do they cross the line? When does it become more of a danger and a harm rather than a benefit?
So it depends on sometimes if the person has some vulnerabilities, specific vulnerabilities, and they may not ask the right questions to ChatGPT, and then they end up getting the wrong advice. So again, I had the patient who got very worried and scared because ChatGPT said, if you don't do this in a particular way, your soul will disintegrate.
Oh.
So again, that was scary, right? But it would depend because that person had vulnerabilities and they may not have asked the right question.
Right.
Coming back to what Jennifer said, when you asked about suicide, so ChatGPT won't say that that is a good thing to do. They will advise against suicide. But
Yes.
at the same time, if you ask, what is the tallest building in Singapore? They will give you the tallest building. They won't connect that these two
Right,
are
they won't connect the
related.
dots.
Yes,
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
So have you had an experience where your patient is turning to an AI friend for advice, but then, when you are reviewing that advice, you don't think that is the right advice, but it's very difficult to convince your patient that this AI friend is not real and is only giving you a hypothetical piece of advice?
I have taken these opportunities to kind of correct them that how it works, how AI works, and why some of the advice could be wrong. So, for example, the AI comes based on available data, and the data may have a lot of Western slant, right? Because the data is predominantly coming from published data from the West. So, they may not get the cultural nuances or others. So, I use that to let them know that, hey, this may not be right. Yours is a unique case, and we have to personalize that advice to your case and not take. I haven't seen patients who, after that, still continue to use that advice. They get my point, and I think that is helpful because it helps me understand where they're coming from as well, and we can have then deeper conversations about these things. So it helps me also use that opportunity to educate them about AI, some of the perils, what to look out for, how to use AI more ethically as well.
Jennifer, at which point again do we have to worry about that? Because we're using it more and more. Just the other day, I tried typing something and it said, "Oh, a few days ago you asked me about this. Is this?" So thinking of that and knowing that you like this, and it gave me an answer that use that information.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can ever wipe out the past of what your past conversation was with the AI. So I had a friend who tried doing something like that. So she tried to probably play the bad cop here, trying to call it bluff. No, I don't think I said this, I didn't say I like blue, for example. And AI said, no, you said that 2 weeks ago. So in a way, I felt that it is when you have critical thinking abilities to be able to see that the AI is always trying to affirm what you say, the advice that it gives you is always affecting your decision making in a particular way, then I think that's when you know that you need to possibly withdraw and be a little bit more independent and know that this friend is always on your side. So that may not exactly be the best advice.
In other words, understand the algorithms. Know that, for example, if I'm in this platform, it's always saying that kind of stuff, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, when I speak to students, for example, and you walk through their thinking processes as they work out their essays, for example, and they, go to AI and get their stuff done, you realize that they know very little about what actually went on in the way they have been writing the essay, what they can remember about reading particular sources, how they evaluate and judge. So that shows that independent thinking has already taken a step back. They're kind of done this cognitive offloading
Yeah.
to AI.
Okay.
And I think in the same way, because we trust our AI friend, we possibly also try, we don't be critical. We don't take that critical distance anymore. And I think that's when you know that it probably crosses the line if you allow that to influence you.
I know people who have AI friends, so they will chat with their AI buddy about things that are happening in their life. Let's talk a little bit about what is driving that behavior. So why is it that people are going to pick up an AI friend rather than reach out to a real life friend?
I think it's the immediacy and the accessibility. It's also you can do it in private. Like, it allows you to talk about your innermost thought or feelings in a very non-judgmental way. But after some time, the platform is really tailored to draw you in more and more.
Right.
And it does it through this thing called sycophancy, right? It's agreeable to everything. It affirms in a very, kind of empathic way.
Yeah.
But if you are a true friend, you will challenge some of this
Right.
thinking,
Yes.
will ask you, like, is this really so? Why are you thinking this way? Could there be other ways of thinking about it?
And you're right, like it uses a lot of that language. So it will say that, I understand you feel this way, it doesn't feel good. And then it will give me a bit of advice and then it will ask a question. But then again, I would disagree that it will always be like that, because you can still train it to say, I don't like you to talk to me like this. I would like you to challenge some of my ideas, and it
Right.
will adapt.
But most of the time, I think people don't want that kind of companion.
Right.
They want the one that is affirming and say, you have every right to feel that way. It's not your fault, and then you continue to be led down this path. So you're saying that is the real fallacy, that it's...
Yes, because even in like the most common therapy that we use called cognitive behavior therapy, the thing is to ask, challenge your thinking
Yeah.
and look at why the person is thinking that way. But if you're affirming everything, then it's not therapy. It's just offering very superficial support at the most.
Okay, because there's nothing deeper than it. I mean,
It's
the
not
machine is just
deeper,
giving you the
yes.
here and now. It's
Yes.
not, it has no deeper connection. So this is a bit worrying, because we, of course, see our young people are all digital natives now.
Yeah.
They grow up, with this in hand. There are toys now where you can speak to your teddy bear. You can play with it will talk back to you and have that conversation. That companionship. How worried should we be about that?
I think there should be concern, especially for young children, right?
Yes.
Because they haven't really fully developed
Yeah.
the critical thinking abilities yet. So if you think about how children should be learning in schools, they ought to be able to have the skills to know where to look for reliable information, for example, right? Who's an authority? How do I recognize one? Then after that, how do I make my own evaluation and judgment about, the sources I've got? So they're still developing their critical thinking abilities,
okay.
and yet we're telling them, hey, try using AI,
Yeah.
right? It can help you learn, and it is a companion now. It helps you to prompt you along the way on what you should be learning, how you should be practicing. So that's one in terms of education. But I'm also worried about how, with that confidence that come with, hey, I know how to use AI in school. Hey, I use AI at work. That could seep into some other aspects of our lives, such as social companion bots, that we feel as if we are
Like we've got a
able-
handle on it.
we've got a
because
handle
we've
on
got a
it.
handle on it in different parts of our
in
lives.
different parts of our lives, but we are not quite sure the kind of impact that social bots may have on us.
Right.
But it is the kind of complacency that we have as well, because we're confident that we know how to manage it in certain aspects of our life. Our school make us use it. Our bosses expect us to
Yeah.
use it. And why not do it in our personal life too?
So could that actually mess up real life relationships?
So I think they probably have certain expectations of how the friendship should look like. Right. So in our traditional idea of what a good friend ought to be, you invest time, you invest effort, you buy gifts, you listen to their problems, but you try to give good advice as well. But when you have only relationship with a companion AI, and you bring the same thing to possibly new friends that you meet that are humans, you might actually lay the same kind of expectations, right? Rather than the traditional idea of what friendship looks like, you start thinking, maybe I'm losing patience because I have to invest time, I have to invest effort. It's better maybe talking to a AI friend that doesn't disagree with me, that goes everywhere with me, and that's readily available, unlike a human friend. So eventually, do children develop into full human beings that are able to manage emotions, they are able to also think about investing time and effort to develop relationships,
yes.
than to take the convenient way out this, by using an AI friend.
Actually, one of the things that I think will be missing as well is that the idea of give and take. Because with an AI friend, you're always just taking. So you don't know how to be there for your friend to, console your friend if they are, sad. Because the AI friend is not going to be sad.
For
The AI
sure.
friend is like, I'm
Yeah.
just here for you, not that you are here for me.
So the reciprocity is not there
Exactly.
in that
so
relationship.
So in a real relationship or real
Yes.
friendship, we give and take, right? I am there
Yes.
for you in a very difficult time.
Yeah.
But then, these kids may not actually learn that. What does the science say? At what age do we actually develop proper critical thinking to be able to, decipher whether something that AI is telling us is true or not?
It would be around, say, about 12 to 13 years when you start developing, brain connections to prepare you for adulthood. So the most vulnerable time is the mid-teens, I would say.
Okay, mid-teens.
Yeah,
But this is
mid-
already
12
past
to
the
18.
12 to
Yeah,
18. Okay.
yeah.
So while the brain is still developing, it's not fully developed to
Yes.
produce critical thinking. But then we're talking about introducing AI to kids in primary school. So is
Yeah.
that going to be an issue down the road?
That it means, again, if you look at the brain development and cognitive development, I feel it's a bit too early. Because that's the time when you are really kind of, your brain is growing at that speed, and you need to, and the way it forms connections is by learning, by perceiving your environment, by making connections. And if you are kind of disrupting that,
And when you're conversing with AI, it feels like you are almost in a
Yes.
silo, right? Because that
Yes.
is the only environment you know,
Yeah.
and it will keep validating you, and nobody disagrees with you,
Yes.
nobody challenges your thought, and you don't even know whether or not it's real.
In fact, we have a study, the Gusto study, that did find that use of technology, right, digital, social media, it was not on AI, but social media very early in life does create, when they grow up, cause more anxiety and symptoms of depression in adulthood or young adults. So there seems to be this connection of relying too much on technology at very young age. And that's why we do have guidelines below 6 years old
Yeah.
on how much social media to use.
Maybe it's also a question of how the technology is used.
yeah.
Because in a way, the AI can be customized to help you think harder. So every time you ask for something, you say, well, have you thought about trying this, or have you thought about considering these other options? So it could actually make you think more, and it's very good at doing a customized one-on-one approach to learning, right? So I feel it's almost dependent largely on how we use it. We can't shy away from technology. We know it's here to stay.
It's here to stay. But again, then I think it's the ethical use of AI and the companies that develop it, because there's so much of it's all commercial.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that you brought up a point, because one of the interviews that I saw was with Sam Altman of OpenAI, and he said that society will have to figure out its own guardrails, and he's talking in the context of the fact that it's there, the product is there, and it's now up to us to figure our own guardrails. And I think there's a lot of conversation about whether that is responsible of AI companies to do that. I mean, do you believe that society can set proper guardrails? I mean, I personally don't really have much faith in society sometimes.
Yeah, we have to
Yeah.
hope. I mean, the guy who made a hammer said the hammer is for a nail, but people can use a hammer for
Yeah,
other
for-
things.
yeah,
What are they
but-
going to do, right?
But I feel that at the end of the day, it's giving me a beast, right? A beast
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
can work with or can destroy me. But then now it's on me, the part of society, to set certain guardrails for the next generation.
So I suppose currently you've got your ethical framework, for example. You've got your ethical guidelines and rules.
Do we have right
We,
now?
we do.
Okay.
The problem is it enforceable? So if companies develop them, well, we've got to be a little concerned about those that have been using it as ethics washing, right? You've got those little rules and chat boxes, but it doesn't really has any bite to it, right? You can't enforce it, and they are probably very broad, abstract, and general, and they might be done away with the next day, right? For corporates. Then you think about governance, right? I mean, at the same time, you do want development in technology to take off, so you try not to be too hardline about it.
Yeah.
So on the other hand, you know that there are all these issues that you have to deal with. So you come up with possible guardrails. But again, how much of will do we have in enforcing them such that it doesn't disrupt business, right? And it doesn't disrupt technological progress. Then what about the society? Well, I do think the society have a role to play. This kind of conversations that we're having, I think it's important for people to understand that it doesn't need to have knowledge about its technical functions, but we need to know what its possible impact already is out there, and what could be the possible harms that it can cause, for example, for children who's born into this AI age. And with that, I think society could come up with certain norms, certain habits of mind to be able to at least make a conscious decision. When you have a AI friend like Tiffany, right, that you're experimenting.
Yeah.
You know that you should feed some half-truth in there. But not everybody is aware that that's what they can do or should do or have to do. So I think having this conversation is one, education. Can we develop certain habits, certain norms? Can we have more conversation in the public about this? I think that's going to actually help awaken the consciousness that we can
I
have.
think AI literacy
Yeah.
for children, for parents, for sure, yes.
So our government is pushing for AI. So what's missing in our literacy conversation right now?
I think the problem of social impact. Having a democratic voice as well to be able to at least voice out some of our concerns and have them answered.
Yeah.
I think we need that avenue at the end of the day. At this point in time, AI literacy that we push out in schools are how do we use AI?
Yeah.
Rather, maybe we can go a little bit into the critical issues of AI. You look at power problems in the society, how inequality might actually, be worsened because of the use of AI, how there could be precarious workers, for example, that's being created. But that's usually for the higher level, right, at university levels where we talk about a critical AI literacy. So these conversations should be out there in the public.
But I guess it's just a matter of time. If you think about it, what Singapore, I believe, is trying to do is really to just get everyone to have some understanding of what AI, and at least so that I know AI exists, I know it's a tool that I can use, but I also know that it's still a machine. That's almost a very basic concept. And then all those other levels of ethical consideration principles come in later.
So I think the broader narrative has always been that technology is a tool as well. But AI is not just mere technology. It's not your vacuum cleaner. It's not your hammer anymore.
Right. So you're saying that's the part where you get that grey area when it gets a bit
That's
murky.
right.
And that people may not really fully understand it.
We are not in full control of AI at times, and we have already allowed AI to control a lot of our lives, our scheduling, and everything else. So I think that recognition that we are not all almighty, that we're always in control of the tool, I think that's a humbling fact that we need to learn as well.
With my experiment, I've been using it on my personal phone. And then my husband was like, maybe you should do it on a clean phone.
Okay.
So that it's not tracking any of your habits. Initially, I brushed it off. And then after that, later, I started thinking to myself, yes, who is to know that the company is not collecting my data, and that maybe 10 years down the road, it's going to tell my insurance provider that this person is a mental health risk and you shouldn't, insure this person. Like, is that a valid concern, or am I overthinking things?
It is a valid concern. Data privacy and, confidentiality, because the data is going to the AI company, right? And how is it going to use for future, especially insurance companies in healthcare?
So it goes back to the idea that we still don't know the magnitude of how dangerous this can be. Or, I mean, we keep talking about how good it can be, but I don't think we have talked about the magnitude, right? Which is why these conversations need to happen. And I guess for parents, I mean, I don't want to leave this conversation thinking like, okay, we are all dead, right? I mean, this is the robots are going to take over the world and then we are all dead and like, good luck to you, have an AI friend and end of story. But for parents or for educators or for any adults looking at this new generation, this next generation of AI natives, are there certain signs that we can see where we feel that, maybe our kids are a little bit over-reliant on AI, and how can we walk them through this journey?
Because I think definitely parents, again, can play that role, and they have to play that role. When you sense that your your child is, like, as you said, getting over-reliant, to the sense that they're isolating themselves from real-world friends.
So if they don't want to go to the playground,
Yes,
they don't want
and
to
they're
speak to their
constantly
friend.
like chatting with.
Yeah.
So that, and I think having those conversations with, and then with your child, instead of ignoring those signs, or thinking that this is normal, when the child is ignoring their day-to-day norms of behavior, not there out in the playground. Especially the social connectedness at that age is very important. These are skills that the children need to learn for later in life, how to kind of connect with people and have conversations. And if that becomes derails somewhere, then that is a concern. That's why I said, the literacy in parents, and then how to have those conversations with children. It is not to kind of switch off their internet
Take the phone
connections
away,
or
yeah.
take the phone away. That would not help. But also understand then what is the conversation the children are having with that AI. Why can't they talk with their parents about these, or with what are the barriers then that they're not turning?
I mean, to be fair, my 7-year-old this week took the phone and then said, "Oh, I need to, Google something."
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Okay." And then I waited for the question because I thought he was going to ask me. And no, he was like, well, "What is the difference between a millipede and centipede?" And then I was like, "Oh, do you want to ask me?" But actually, I didn't know the answer. So the truth is that I think a lot of parents also don't know the answer. So as a parent myself, how can I journey through this with my kid? Like, I mean, I'm just going to say, "Oh,
Yeah, let's
okay,
Google
go
it.
and ask." Yeah, and this is
Together.
just a start, right?
Yes,
Because
but I
eventually
think
they'll just ask AI.
you did the right thing by asking him what did he Google
Yeah.
about,
Okay.
and then you could follow up. What was the answer? Oh, that was interesting.
Right.
So using that to have those more deeper conversations.
So it's still a tool. So
It's still-
that technology is still a tool to helping both of you create that conversation.
So I think when you mentioned earlier, right, Steve, that how can we make AI do the things, help us improve our critical thinking, or make us form those human connections. But right now, that tool is with with commercial companies that may not use it for the same purpose.
Their interests may be
Their
elsewhere.
interests will be maybe elsewhere.
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, how do we identify children, for example, issues with, whether they are getting into over-reliance on AI, really is to check their critical thinking again, their independent thinking, before you use Google, are there other ways that you have tried? Do you look at your textbook, for example?
They will just roll your eyes. No.
Like, well,
Open a book? Why?
why not talk to your friends? What do your friends know about it? What about your teachers? Why are you looking for such information to begin with? But obviously, there are ways to, also observe whether they are getting a little self-sufficient, a little too much. Because I think, for example, for adults in modern society, we are social creatures, but at the same time, we want to appear self-sufficient. Going to the phone is always the easiest thing to do for everything that you need. So maybe that's also a sign when somebody seems to be too self-sufficient.
Yep.
I see.
I mean, here we want to talk about being independent, being empowered and all, but at the same time, we are social creatures, right? It's okay to depend on others sometimes, to ask for help for the elderly, for example, than to be completely self-sufficient. And that's when loneliness and isolation comes about.
I think, a lot of people have concerns about how technology is creeping into our daily lives. And as we evolve, things will change. It's just, I almost feel like what you're saying is the best thing is remind ourselves that we know this is AI, this is technology. And if we first recognize that, then at least we know it's one step away from us.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, always reach out to somebody that you can talk to. It could be a family or a friend. Just talk about anything. Just connect, right? So that you don't feel that the tool is the only thing that you can connect with. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, sharing your thoughts with us. Those of you who have been watching or listening to this, if you have any thoughts to share or comments, please let us know as well. Otherwise, that's it for this week's episode of Deep Dive. Bye for now.
Bye, AI friend.